Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, 6th grade. This is History/Geography. It is March 30th, Monday. If you have seen my math class yet, then you know what the reason for this video recording is. If you're watching your history first, that's fine. This is how we're going to be doing things for right now until hopefully we can come back April 15th. That's what it currently is slated for. We don't know, so for the time being, we're doing the packets that you've hopefully received, plus these video recordings. But for those of you who haven't seen the math class yet, welcome again, 6th grade. Guys and gals, I really truly miss y'all. Y'all are the class I'm with the most. I got really used to y'all, so not having y'all here makes the school very different. I'm not used to doing video recordings as a teaching format, but we're going to get used to it. So we're starting chapter 14, the United States, Time for Freedom and Responsibility. And we're going to be going over section 14.1 today. So this is right after World War II. After World War II, the United States was considered one of the most powerful and prosperous countries in the world, or powerful and wealthy. America's prosperity still rested upon a solid moral and spiritual foundation, and the economy was really good right now. Factories were able to produce goods that were needed in quantities never before seen. Stores were able to sell them, and the people could afford to buy them. The prosperity of the United States during these years laid to the groundwork for the research and development of today's computers, lasers, and medical wonders. People were working hard and had the money to improve their lives, support their families, and invest in the future. Between 1945 and 1965, many young couples made down payments on houses and started families. The birth rate soared at this time, causing a baby boom or an increase in population. As the population grew from 150 million in 1950 to 180 million in 1960, a growth of 30 million in 10 years. Many Americans moved from rural areas to larger cities. Soon, 2 out of every 3 people in the United States lived in or near a city. Most lived in communities called suburbs, or kind of rural areas where houses would be right on the outside of the city. Suburbs were made possible by the automobile. People didn't have to live in the city because they could now drive to and from work. Better and faster transportation, including jet airplanes, also made many products available to all. New technologies increased the production of food and improved ways to preserve it. As a result, a wide variety of food became available year-round. No longer did you have to wait for certain crops in the summer. Foods could be preserved for year-round consumption. As medical technology improved, so did the health of Americans. The average lifespan, which had been only 47 in 1900, increased to about 77 by the year 2000. In the early 1950s, Dr. Jonas Salk developed the polio vaccine, ending the spread of that dreaded disease. Polio didn't necessarily kill you, but it crippled you. It made you unable to really walk and move around. FDR suffered from it. Other vaccines were later developed to protect against measles, mumps, diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough, and other diseases. Because of new technologies in the workplace, many Americans began to work fewer hours per week. New inventions for the home, including the automatic washer, dryers, dishwashers, and microwave ovens, made chores at home less time-consuming. Now families had much more leisure time to spend on activities such as sports and entertainment. A new form of entertainment called television, I'm sure you all might have heard of the TV before, became popular in the 1950s. Although television sets had very small screens and offered only a few channels, by the mid-1950s they were found in 90% of American homes. With more leisure time, millions of Americans began taking vacations, making tourism a major industry. Americans touring the country not only enjoyed using the new interstate highways, but more and more Americans also began traveling by jet airplane. A greater feeling of national pride and unity developed as people finally got to go and tour and see these scenic national parks such as Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon, or historic places such as Valley Forge and Gettysburg, places they would have read about even in their history books. During World War II, many minority groups served our country by working and fighting for freedom. In the years after the war, many Americans were convinced that now was the time to overcome racial prejudice Asians, Africans, Latin Americans, and American Indians began participating more in all areas of American life. The first group to achieve more opportunities was Black Americans, who wanted to guarantee a better life for their children under the legal protection of their government. Jackie Robinson, a young man from a sharecropper's farm in Georgia, signed on as a player for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947 and became the first Black Major League Baseball player. He led the way for many other Black athletes to become Major League sports stars. In 1962, Jackie Robinson was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Through the years, many more Black athletes became role models for millions of young Americans. At the age of 6, Marian Anderson displayed such talent as a member of the choir in Philadelphia's Union Baptist Church that the church established a trust fund known as Marian Anderson's Future to pay for her professional training. By 1939, she was recognized throughout Europe as one of the greatest opera singers of the age. But in that same year, she was denied the privilege of singing in Washington, D.C.'s Constitution Hall. Instead, on Easter Sunday morning in 1939, Marian Anderson stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial before 75,000 Americans of all races and walks of life who came to hear her marvelous voice. Later, she became the first Black American to be a performing member of the New York City's Metropolitan Opera. By 1961, she was recognized by the American Institute of Public Opinion as one of the world's most admired women. Marian Anderson used her God-given talent and honest character to peacefully bring about change, and Americans responded to her personal appeal. During this time, the civil rights movement also begins to take off. In the 1950s and 1960s, Black Americans made many important political and economic improvements through the civil rights movement. When 7-year-old Linda Brown was not allowed to attend a neighborhood public school because of her color, the Supreme Court called for the desegregation or racial integration of all public schools in a ruling known as Brown versus Board of Education. This ruling allowed all children in America, regardless of color, to attend school together. Even with this ruling, the school would not allow her first to attend until the National Guard escorted her to school. Just a year after the Supreme Court's important decision, Rosa Parks, a brave Black American woman in Montgomery, Alabama, refused to give up her bus seat to a white passenger. This was a violation of the city's segregation laws, and Rosa Parks was arrested. A group of Black Americans in Montgomery responded by organizing a boycott in which they refused to use the city bus system. In 1957, the Supreme Court ordered Montgomery to desegregate its bus system, allowing all passengers to be treated equally. You talking about a great place to stand up for equal rights. Montgomery, Alabama was notorious for its mistreatment of African Americans. Rosa Parks could have easily been hanged or lynched by a mob for her bravery, but she stood up to what she believed was wrong. But also another Alabama native, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. By 1955, a young Black minister had helped organize both the Montgomery bus boycott and a civil rights campaign that soon spread nationwide. As a result of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s efforts and the efforts of many others, Congress passed legislation that guaranteed voting, housing, and job rights for ethnic minorities. This legislation became known as the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They were being knocked over and beaten over by fire department's hoses. I don't know if you've ever seen what a fire hose does to someone when it's going full blast, but they should never be used on human beings. And yet Martin Luther and others at this time were being subjected to such pain. Perhaps the most dramatic moment of the civil rights movement came in 1963, when Dr. King addressed some 200,000 people from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, standing where Marian Anderson had stood on that Easter Sunday morning in 1939. Dr. King called for an end to discrimination. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Dr. King was saying, don't judge my children based on what they look like. Judge them by their hearts. Judge them by their character. Don't you wish that's how people would judge you? Not by how you looked, but by what was in here, your heart. That's what he was asking for. Dr. King discouraged using violence to end racial discrimination. He said, "Don't let anyone pull you so low as to hate them." Many Americans supported what he stood for. However, Dr. King's teachings that people should break the law in nonviolent ways to bring about change opened the door to other kinds of law breaking. Power-hungry individuals stirred up the people, and riots terrorized black neighborhoods in the late 1960s. Communism and other radical ideas also hurt the civil rights movement. As violence began to take over, Dr. King found he could not control all the radical groups. In 1968, while on a visit to Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. King was assassinated by a gunman who used a violent atmosphere to justify his action. Today, people of all ethnic groups are striving to realize Dr. King's dream that people be judged by their character rather than by their skin color. It is a dream shared by all Americans of goodwill, and great progress has been made. Black Americans have now served in all branches of the U.S. government, including the presidency with Barack Obama. Now also about Asian Americans. Because of communist oppression in Asia, a large number of Asians began arriving in the United States and Canada during the 1970s, willing to work and to make great sacrifices to give their children a good education. Some of the top computer engineers and programmers, as well as medical and business professionals, have been Asian Americans. They have also participated in American politics, and many have served in high offices, including the U.S. Senate and positions in presidential cabinets. Let's talk briefly about American Indians. With a population of nearly 2 million, American Indians make up a significant part of America's population. Some project that their population will nearly double in the next 50 years. Though Indians had been placed on reservations during the 1800s, by 2000, over half of the total Native American population lived away from reservations. By the 19th century, American Indians held national public office in both the Senate and even the Vice Presidency. Now let's talk briefly about Hispanic Americans. The fastest growing and possibly largest minority ethnic group in the United States is the Spanish-speaking or Hispanic Americans. The largest number of Hispanic Americans have come from Mexico, Central America, Cuba, and Puerto Rico, an American Commonwealth that is represented in the United States Congress. After the communist dictator Fidel Castro overthrew the government of Cuba in 1959, several 100,000 Cubans sought political and economic freedoms in the United States. These and other Hispanics have achieved much success in American life. Many states have had Hispanic governors, and Hispanic Americans have served in a wide range of political positions, including city mayors, Surgeon General, and even members of Congress. In 2009, the first female Hispanic Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, was confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So let's look at the future for these minorities in America. Great efforts have been made to ensure that freedoms are extended to all citizens of the United States, regardless of skin color or race. Cuban-born former Senator Melquiades Mel Martinez spoke of his opportunity for success in America. Regardless of where you are from, what language you speak, or the color of your skin, if you share the American dream of a brighter tomorrow, if you pursue it with respect for the law and for others, and with an abiding faith in God, all things are possible. It is by holding fast to the principles upon which this nation was founded that Americans will be unified. Moral character, honesty, diligence, kindness, patience, service, among other qualities, should be the standard by which people are measured. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas realized the importance of moral character. Like Jackie Robinson, Justice Thomas was born to 4 black sharecroppers in Georgia. Through his own hard work and God-given ability, he earned a law degree and served in several legal and government positions. In a speech given in February of 1998, Justice Thomas emphasized the importance of good character. Having the character that will lead others to a path of virtue does not require extraordinary intelligence, a privileged upbringing, or significant wealth, nor, for that matter, is a character a matter of accomplishing extraordinary feats or undertaking magnanimous acts. It is the small things we do each day, the often mundane and routine tasks that form our habits and seem to have the most lasting impression on our fellow man. So leaving today's lesson, It was not his intelligence he believed, not his wealth, not anything he did other than taking care of others. A moral responsibility to do good. And everybody has an opportunity to do that here in America. So that concludes today's lesson. Make sure you read through section 14.1 on your own, because you have on page 250, you have comp check 14A. I want you to read and answer all 4 of these questions. This is going to be part of your packet work for you to return back each week. It will be for a grade, so please do it. The information is in the lesson. Guys, thank you for listening in on my talk in history. I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good day.